Emma Taylor checked the equipment in the back of ambulance 47 with methodical precision. Oxygen tanks, defibrillator, trauma supplies, everything in its place, exactly where it should be. You know, most paramedics don't do full equipment checks every single shift, her partner, Jake Martinez, said, climbing into the driver's seat. That's what the night crew is for. I like to be prepared, Emma said simply, her tone suggesting the conversation was over. Jake had been Emma's partner for 6 months now, and he'd learned that she kept her personal life locked down tighter than the controlled substance cabinet. No talk about family, no mention of previous jobs, no stories about her life before becoming a paramedic. Just work, professional distance, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Dispatch to 47, we have a call. Cardiac arrest, 52-year-old male, 1847 Morrison Street. Emma was already moving, securing the equipment bay. Copy. Dispatch 47 responding. The drive took 4 minutes. Emma spent the time mentally reviewing cardiac arrest protocols, drug dosages, compression rates. Information she knew by heart but reviewed anyway, because preparation prevented mistakes. And mistakes. She cut off that thought before it could form completely. The scene was controlled chaos. Family members were panicking, a man on the floor, unconscious, not breathing. Emma and Jake moved with practiced efficiency, her hands already starting compressions while Jake set up the bag valve mask. How long has he been down? Emma asked the wife. Maybe 2 minutes. He just collapsed. He was fine. The woman was crying, barely coherent. Emma's compressions were perfect, exactly the right depth, exactly the right rate. After 2 minutes, they shocked him, then continued CPR. After 4 minutes, they shocked again. The man's eyes fluttered open. We've got him back, Jake said, relief evident in his voice. Nice work, partner. As they loaded the patient into the ambulance, Emma's hands were steady, her voice calm as she gave the hospital report via radio. Professional, competent, unremarkable, but inside her heart was racing because they'd be taking this patient to Metropolitan General. And Metropolitan General was where she'd sworn she'd never go again, where someone might recognize her, where her carefully constructed life could unravel in seconds. Emma, Jake's voice pulled her from her thoughts. You okay? You look pale. Fine, she said automatically, just focused on the patient. But as they pulled into the Metropolitan General ambulance bay, Emma kept her head down, her face partially hidden behind her paperwork. 12 years. She'd managed to avoid this hospital for 12 years. Today, that streak was about to end. The emergency department was busy, typical for a Tuesday afternoon. Emma and Jake wheeled their cardiac patient through the automatic doors, and Emma felt her shoulders tense automatically. Trauma Bay 3, the charge nurse directed, barely glancing at them. Good quick handoff, minimal interaction, then out before anyone looked too closely. Dr. Richard Palmer took the patient report, his attention on the monitors rather than on Emma's face. Excellent work in the field. Quick response time likely saved his life. Just doing our job, doctor, Emma said, keeping her voice neutral and her eyes down. But as they prepared to leave, another doctor entered the bay, older, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of a senior surgeon. Dr. Thomas Chen, head of cardiothoracic surgery. Emma's blood went cold. She'd worked with Chen years ago, before, when she'd been someone else entirely. Dr. Palmer, I heard we had a cardiac save, Chen was saying, scanning the chart. Paramedics did excellent field work. Where are they? Emma was already moving toward the door, but Jake, oblivious, spoke up. That would be us, doctor. My partner here did most of the work. Chen looked up, his eyes moving to Emma's face. She saw the moment of recognition flicker across his features, confusion, then certainty, then shock. I'm sorry, have we met? Chen asked carefully, his tone suggesting he knew exactly who she was, but couldn't quite believe it. No, doctor, Emma said quickly. Common face, we need to clear for the next call. She was out the door before Chen could respond, moving fast enough that Jake had to jog to keep up. Emma, what the hell? That was rude even for you. We have paperwork to complete. Let's go, Emma said, her voice tight. But in the ambulance, after they'd cleared the hospital, Jake studied her face. What was that about? That doctor knew you. He didn't, Emma. I saw his face. He absolutely recognized you. Jake's voice grew more insistent. Who are you really? Because I've been your partner for 6 months, and I'm starting to think Emma Taylor isn't even your real name. Emma stared straight ahead, her hands gripping the steering wheel. My name is Emma Taylor. I'm a paramedic. That's all you need to know. Is it? Because the way you practice medicine, it's not like other paramedics. You know things you shouldn't know. You see patterns before they're obvious. You handle complex cases like someone with years of advanced medical training. Jake paused. Emma, if you're hiding something, if there's something I should know about my partner— There isn't, Emma interrupted. I'm just good at my job. But that night, alone in her small apartment, Emma stared at the locked drawer in her bedroom. Inside were medical diplomas in a different name, newspaper clippings from 12 years ago, and a medical license that had been revoked, with the words gross negligence resulting in patient death stamped across it. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, that's who she used to be. A promising young surgeon with a bright future. Until one mistake, one terrible decision, one patient who died on her operating table had destroyed everything. She'd spent 12 years rebuilding herself as Emma Taylor, paramedic. 12 years keeping her distance from hospitals and doctors who might remember. 12 years hiding from the worst moment of her life. But tonight, Dr. Chen had recognized her, and Emma knew that her carefully constructed wall of silence was beginning to crack. The next day, Emma requested a different coverage area. Anything that would keep her away from Metropolitan General. Dispatch accommodated, sending them to the Northern District where the hospitals were smaller and less likely to have doctors from her past. But Jake wasn't letting it go. I did some research last night, he said during their lunch break. Emma Taylor, certified paramedic, excellent record. But here's the thing. Your employment history only goes back 8 years. Before that, nothing. No previous jobs, no references, no trail. Emma kept eating her sandwich, not responding. It's like you didn't exist before 8 years ago, Jake continued. Which is weird, right? Because you're what, late 30s? Where were you for the first 30 years of your life? Jake, drop it. I can't drop it. You're my partner. I need to trust you. And right now I feel like I'm working with a ghost. Emma set down her sandwich and looked Jake in the eye. My name is Emma Taylor. I'm a paramedic. That's all you need to know. Jake didn't say anything for a long moment. Emma, if you're running from something, if you did something, I need to know. I didn't do anything illegal, Emma said quietly. But you did something. Something you're hiding. Emma sighed, rubbing her temples. There's nothing to hide. I'm just good at my job. Jake's expression softened, but there was still doubt in his eyes. But if you're hiding something, Emma, it's affecting our work. If there's something about your past I don't know, I need to know it. You have to trust me. Emma stayed silent for a long moment, weighing the words. I told you, she finally said. I'm Emma Taylor. I'm a paramedic. That's all there is. That night, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed life was about to unravel. She sat on her bed, staring at the locked drawer again. It felt like a lifetime ago when she had made the decision to leave her surgical career behind, to walk away from everything that had once defined her. The medical field was unforgiving. She knew it better than anyone. One mistake, one poor decision, and the whole world could turn against you. Marcus Wilson, a patient she had failed to save, was the reason she was no longer Dr. Elizabeth Kane. But even now, years later, the weight of that failure pressed on her chest. Emma had tried to bury it, to become someone else. But no matter how far she ran, the past always found a way to catch up. The next day, Jake asked again, What happened? What are you hiding? His words had an edge to them, the kind of edge that told Emma he wasn't going to let this go. You don't need to know, she said, her voice sharp. I told you, I'm Emma Taylor, a paramedic. But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't enough. Jake wasn't satisfied, and Emma wasn't sure she would ever be able to hide the truth from him. That afternoon, Emma walked into a small cafe to meet an old friend. Maria had been her confidant back in her days as a surgeon. Maria was the only person who knew the truth, the only person who had stood by her when everything had fallen apart. And yet Emma hadn't seen her in years. You look different, Maria said, studying Emma's face, like you've been running. I have, Emma admitted, but I'm not running anymore. Maria looked at her, her eyes filled with understanding. What happened, Emma? What are you hiding from? Emma hesitated. I lost everything. I was a doctor and then I wasn't. The mistakes I made, they cost someone their life. You're still carrying that guilt, aren't you? I never stopped, Emma said softly. But I don't know if I can keep running. Maria reached out, taking her hand. You need to face it, Emma. You can't keep hiding. It'll catch up to you, like it always does. Emma's heart ached. Maria was right. She couldn't keep pretending to be someone she wasn't. It was time to confront the past, no matter how painful it was. That night, Emma found herself staring at the phone in her hand, the number of the medical board in front of her. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. To call or not to call? The answer came quickly. She dialed the number. Hello, this is Dr. Elizabeth Kane. I need to know if my case was reopened. The voice on the other end of the line was calm and professional. Dr. Kane, we've been trying to reach you for 3 years. We've reopened your case. The new evidence provided by the Wilson family, medical records indicating an undiagnosed clotting disorder, has changed the outcome. You were exonerated. Emma sat frozen, the words barely registering at first. Exonerated? She hadn't heard that word in over a decade. It felt foreign, impossible. I don't understand, Emma stammered. You mean to say I wasn't at fault? Correct, the voice said. The clotting disorder would have killed the patient regardless of treatment. The board has reversed its decision. Your license can be reinstated. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She was stunned, overwhelmed by the realization that everything she had believed for 12 years might not be true. She had been carrying the weight of a mistake that wasn't hers. You can apply for reinstatement, the voice continued, but you must complete a re-entry program before we can fully restore your license. Emma hung up the phone, her mind racing. Her entire life had been built around the idea that she was guilty, that she had failed Marcus Wilson. But now, in an instant, the foundation of that belief had crumbled. For a long time, she sat in silence, her hands shaking as she gripped the phone. She wasn't sure if she felt relief, anger, or just pure disbelief. She had spent 12 years hiding, running from her past, afraid that she would never get the chance to make amends. But now she had a choice. Would she continue to live as Emma Taylor, the paramedic who had buried her identity and her past? Or would she return to being Elizabeth Kane, the doctor she had once been, and face the truth of what had happened all those years ago? The decision wasn't easy. Emma knew that. The fear of failure, of making another mistake, still loomed large in her mind. But the truth was undeniable. She had been exonerated. The man she had once believed she killed hadn't died because of her. She could go back, but would she? The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror, the weight of her decision hanging heavy in the air. She could feel the echo of her past self, the surgeon who had once been filled with ambition and arrogance still lingering. But she also saw someone who had been changed by her experiences, someone who had learned humility and restraint. Maybe, just maybe, she could combine both identities. The cautious, careful Emma Taylor and the skilled, confident Dr. Elizabeth Kane. Emma sighed, a deep, weary sigh. It was time to stop running, time to face what she had avoided for 12 years. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to become the person she had always been meant to be. The decision to move forward wasn't easy, but Emma knew it was the right one. She couldn't stay in hiding forever. As the weeks passed, she began the process of reapplying for reinstatement to the medical board, enrolling in the re-entry program they had offered. It felt like a second chance, a chance to rebuild the career she had once thrown away. But there was a voice inside her that still hesitated, a part of her that was terrified of returning to the field where she had once failed so profoundly. Every day, she reminded herself of the progress she had made in the past 12 years. As a paramedic, she had saved countless lives. She had learned to work with her hands, with her instincts, with the knowledge she had gained. But no matter how many people she had helped, there was still a part of her that felt unworthy of her skills. It wasn't just her past that she was running from, it was the person she had become. Emma had spent so long hiding behind her paramedic persona, pretending she was someone she wasn't. But with each passing day, she felt herself shifting back into the person she used to be. The fear, the guilt, the shame, they all started to fade, replaced by the resolve to move forward. Jake noticed the change in her too. He could see the determination in her eyes, the shift in her demeanor. And although Emma didn't talk much about her past, Jake had begun to understand that whatever she was hiding had been holding her back. It wasn't just the fact that she used to be a surgeon. It was what she had lost because of it. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, Jake leaned against the ambulance, watching as Emma cleaned the equipment. "You know, you don't have to do this alone," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm not alone," Emma replied, her voice steady. "I have you. I have my work." Jake gave her a long look. "You know what I mean. If you need to talk, I'm here. You don't have to carry all that weight by yourself." Emma paused, looking at him. "I know," she said quietly, "but there are some things I have to do on my own." Jake nodded, accepting her words, even if he didn't fully understand them. He had no idea what Emma had been through, what demons she was fighting. But he respected her. He knew she would get there when she was ready. And when the day finally came, when she stepped back into a hospital for the first time in 12 years, Emma felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had completed the re-entry program, but now she had to prove herself. The weight of her past pressed against her, but she was determined not to let it break her again. The hospital was everything she remembered, cold, sterile, bustling with activity. But this time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She wasn't hiding. She was there on her own terms. Dr. Thomas Chen was waiting for her when she arrived in the trauma bay. He looked her over, his expression unreadable. "I see you've completed the re-entry program," he said. "You're cleared to work as a surgeon again." Emma felt a pang in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this, but she wasn't going to back down. She couldn't. "Yes, I have," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm ready." Chen nodded, his gaze sharp. "Good. We need someone who can think on their feet." "Welcome back, Dr. Kane." The words sounded strange on her ears. Dr. Kane. She hadn't heard them in so long, but this time they didn't feel like a weight. They felt like the beginning of something new. Later that day, as she scrubbed in for her first surgery in over a decade, Emma found herself standing in front of the operating table, her hands steady and sure. She was no longer afraid of the mistakes she might make. She had made her peace with her past. Now, all that mattered was saving lives. And as she worked, moving with precision, her thoughts kept returning to one simple truth. No one, not even herself, could define her by a single moment of failure. She had the power to redefine who she was, to use everything she had learned, both from her triumphs and her mistakes, to make a difference. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of surgeries, trauma cases, and decisions made in an instant. Emma's confidence grew with each success, but she knew that this was just the beginning. There would always be patients to save, always more to learn, always more room for growth. But now, with a steady hand and a clear mind, she knew she was ready. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't just a paramedic. She was Dr. Elizabeth Kane, and she was back where she belonged. A few weeks later, Emma stood in the trauma bay, the hum of the busy emergency department surrounding her. It was another chaotic night shift, but this time Emma felt more at home than ever. She was no longer the woman hiding from her past. She had fully embraced the person she had become. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, surgeon, and now fully integrated into the world she had once left behind. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, Emma found herself reconnecting with the skills and knowledge she had once taken for granted. The fear that had once crippled her now fueled her determination to be better. She could still hear Marcus Wilson's name echo in her mind, but now, instead of letting the guilt suffocate her, she used it to push herself forward, to be the doctor who never gave up, the doctor who would do everything in her power to save lives. Jake had been the first person to notice the change. He'd seen it in her eyes, in the way she held herself. He wasn't entirely sure how Emma had come to terms with her past, but he could see that she was no longer running from it. And that made all the difference. They had started working together again, this time as equals. No longer just a paramedic and a surgeon, but as two people who had seen each other at their most vulnerable, who understood the weight of the past and the importance of the work they did every day. "You're looking good in there," Jake said one evening as they were cleaning up after a particularly tough trauma case. Emma gave him a tired smile. "Thanks, it feels good to be back." Jake raised an eyebrow, his smile softening. "I mean it. You're different. More yourself." Emma didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her attention to the clipboard in her hands. She had to get used to being seen again, to having someone acknowledge that she was more than just the mistakes she had made. But it wasn't just Jake who had started noticing, it was everyone. The nurses, the residents, even Dr. Chen, everyone could see that she was no longer the shadow of the woman she had once been. "You know, so," Jake continued, "we make a pretty good team." Emma looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "We do, don't we?" She paused for a moment. "Thanks, Jake, for sticking around." Jake's smile was easy, a familiar warmth. What are partners for? That night, after her shift ended, Emma sat in the break room, scrolling through her phone. She had a message waiting for her, a text from Dr. Wells at the medical board. "Dr. Kane, I wanted to personally congratulate you on your successful re-entry. Your journey has been inspiring to many, and we'd like to invite you to speak at the upcoming medical conference on physician wellness and recovery. Your story can help others who are facing similar struggles. Please let me know if you're interested." Emma stared at the screen, the weight of the message sinking in. She had never imagined that her return to medicine, her decision to confront her past, could become a source of inspiration for others. For a long moment, she sat in silence, thinking about everything she had been through. The years of hiding, the failure, the guilt, and finally, the freedom that came with facing it all. And now, here she was, invited to share her story, to help others who were walking the same path she had once walked. Could she do it? Could she stand in front of an audience and speak openly about her failure, about the mistakes she had made? The answer came quickly. Yes. She had spent 12 years hiding. Now it was time to step forward and share what she had learned. The next day, Emma accepted the invitation. She would speak at the conference, not as someone who had never failed, but as someone who had learned from it, and maybe, just maybe, her story could help someone else find their way out of the darkness. The day of the conference arrived, and Emma found herself standing in front of a room full of physicians, all eyes on her. The familiar nerves crept in, but this time they didn't hold her back. She stepped forward, her voice steady and confident. "Good morning," she began, her eyes sweeping over the audience. "My name is Dr. Elizabeth Kane, and 12 years ago I killed a patient." The room went silent. At least that's what I believed for over a decade. I was a promising young surgeon, arrogant enough to attempt a procedure I'd only read about. My patient died. The medical board ruled negligence. I lost my license, my identity, and my belief that I deserved to practice medicine. For 12 years I hid. I changed my name, became a paramedic, and told myself I was protecting patients by limiting my scope of practice. But really, I was protecting myself from the possibility of failing again. Emma paused, looking at the faces in the audience, all of them filled with quiet understanding. But failure doesn't define you. It's how you learn from it that matters, and it's how you use that knowledge to become better that matters most. She shared her story, the long road back, the guilt that had haunted her, and the lessons she had learned. And at the end, when she finished speaking, there was a silence in the room, not of judgment, but of reflection. One by one, the doctors in the room came up to her, sharing their own stories of failure, of mistakes they had made, and the burdens they still carried. When the conference ended, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She hadn't just shared her story, she had given others permission to share theirs. As she walked out of the room, Jake was waiting for her. He smiled when he saw her, but there was something different in his eyes. Pride. "You did it," he said simply. Emma nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "I did." Months passed, and Emma continued to settle into her new life, one that was no longer defined by the past. Each day brought new challenges, new patients, and new opportunities for growth. But this time, she was different. She was no longer afraid to take risks, no longer haunted by the mistakes she had made. Instead, she used them to fuel her work, to become the doctor she had always been capable of being. She had learned that medicine wasn't about perfection. It was about doing the best you could with the information you had, even when that information was incomplete. It was about being honest with yourself and with your patients, about understanding that failure was a part of the process, not the end of it. Dr. Chen had been right all along. She had spent 12 years hiding, but now she was using her past to make her better. She had embraced both the lessons of her surgical training and the humility she had learned as a paramedic. In doing so, she had become the doctor she was always meant to be. One evening, after a particularly difficult shift, Emma sat at her desk in the emergency department, reviewing patient charts. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The tension in her shoulders had eased, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged. Her phone buzzed on the desk, a message from Jake. "How's the new patient going?" he asked, referencing a particularly complex case they had been working on together. Emma smiled as she typed her response. "On track. Should be stable for discharge by morning." The next text was from Dr. Wells, the one who had invited her to the medical conference months ago. "Elizabeth, I wanted to follow up with you. The medical board has decided to recognize your story for its impact on physician wellness. We'd like you to be a keynote speaker at the next national conference." Emma stared at the message for a long moment, the weight of it sinking in. A keynote speaker. She had never imagined herself as a figurehead, someone to be looked up to. But as she thought about everything she had overcome, the years of self-doubt, the fear, the guilt, she realized that this wasn't just a chance to speak for herself. It was a chance to speak for all the doctors who had made mistakes and learned from them, for everyone who had hidden their pain, their guilt, and their fear. She typed her response quickly. "I'd be honored. Thank you for the opportunity." That evening, she sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on everything she had been through. She had spent 12 years running from her past, from the mistakes she had made, from the person she used to be. But now she had reclaimed her life. She had faced her guilt, her shame, and her fear, and she had come out stronger on the other side. The next morning, Emma arrived at the hospital early, ready to tackle whatever challenges the day would bring. As she walked through the corridors, she saw her reflection in the glass doors, her white coat hanging from her shoulders like a symbol of everything she had worked so hard to become. She smiled, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the woman who had been broken and rebuilt, was back, and this time she was ready to face whatever came her way. The call came just before the end of her shift. A multi-vehicle accident, multiple casualties. Emma's heart rate quickened, but she didn't hesitate. She had learned how to act without fear, how to trust her instincts. She rushed to the ambulance with Jake, ready for the chaos that awaited them. As they arrived at the scene, Emma's mind shifted into triage mode. Her hands moved with purpose, assessing, prioritizing, directing the team around her. The trauma was overwhelming, but Emma knew what to do. She didn't second-guess herself, didn't panic. She worked with the calm authority of someone who had faced the worst and learned to survive. When the rescue team finally cleared the last of the victims, Emma stood back, her heart still racing but her hands steady. Jake looked at her, a glint of pride in his eyes. "You did it again." Emma nodded, her mind already shifting to the next task. "We did it together." She knew that she had found her place in the world, not just as a doctor, but as a person who had learned from her past, embraced it, and used it to make a difference. Later that night, as she sat in the quiet of her apartment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been through hell and back, but she had survived. And in doing so, she had discovered that the true strength of a doctor didn't come from being perfect. It came from the ability to continue, to learn, to grow, and to keep trying, no matter what. The door to her past was finally closed, but the lessons she had learned along the way would stay with her forever. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt at peace. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready to face it, head on. If this story moved you emotionally, subscribe to our channel, leave your opinion in the comments, and share this video with others. Months after the conference, Emma found herself walking through the busy halls of Metropolitan General once again, but this time with a different sense of purpose. Her days now were filled with the kind of work she had once only dreamed about, the kind of work that allowed her to use both her paramedic experience and her surgical training in harmony. Each case, each patient, was a reminder of how far she had come. Her relationship with Jake had evolved as well. They were no longer just partners at work. They had become friends, confidants, and sometimes even challengers. Jake had seen the transformation in Emma, and although he never pried too much into her past, he was there to support her in the present. She had started to open up to him in ways she never had before. One evening, they were sitting in the break room, talking about their shift when Jake asked, "How's it feel to be back in the ER? I mean, for real this time, not just pretending." Emma gave him a wry smile. It feels like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do. No more pretending. Jake nodded, his eyes scanning her face for a moment. You've earned it. Not everyone gets to come back after everything you've been through. Not just anyone can be the kind of doctor you are. It's not about being special, Emma replied, her voice steady. It's about being real. But that night, as Emma finished her shift and prepared to head home, she received a call from the medical board. It was a routine check-in, one that Emma had expected since her re-entry program had concluded. But what they said next caught her off guard. Dr. Kane, we've received a request for your participation in a new initiative we're launching. We want to highlight physicians who have overcome personal adversity and used it to reshape their careers. We believe your story is one that could inspire many in the medical field. We're asking you to participate in a nationwide mentorship program for doctors facing personal challenges. Emma listened in stunned silence. She had never imagined that her story would be used as a beacon of hope for others. But as the reality of it settled in, she realized this was more than just another opportunity to speak at a conference or mentor a group of new doctors. This was a chance to use her experience to make a real difference in the lives of others who had been where she once was, lost, broken, and unsure if they could ever overcome their failures. Yes, of course, Emma said, her voice steady but filled with a new sense of purpose. I'd be honored to be a part of it. Over the following months, Emma dedicated herself to the mentorship program, reaching out to doctors who were struggling, sharing her story, and offering guidance. She became a pillar of support for those who thought they couldn't recover, showing them that recovery was not just about time, it was about action. It was about taking responsibility, learning from mistakes, and moving forward. Through her work with the mentorship program, Emma found a new sense of fulfillment. She realized that in helping others face their fears and challenges, she was continuing to heal herself. Every time a mentee shared their story with her, it reminded Emma of her own journey and of how far she had come. At the end of the year, the program hosted a final gathering, a celebration of the doctors who had participated. Emma stood at the front of the room, her heart full as she looked at the faces of the men and women who had walked the same path she had once walked. They were no longer just colleagues, they were her peers, her fellow survivors. You've all made it, she said, her voice filled with conviction. You've all overcome your personal struggles, and you've used those struggles to become better doctors, better people. I'm proud to stand here with you today. After the event, as she left the building and stepped into the cool night air, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. She had come full circle. The woman who had once hidden in shame had found her place among those who understood the true value of failure and redemption. Back at the hospital the next day, Emma received a message from Jake. Hey, I'm proud of you. You've really made a difference. She smiled as she typed her response. We all make a difference, Jake. We just have to believe it. Emma looked out over the city from the hospital window, knowing that the work she was doing now would have an impact long after she was gone. She had learned that the true meaning of success wasn't in how many lives you saved, but in how you changed, how you grew, and how you helped others grow as well. And as she returned to the trauma bay for another shift, she knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Because this time, she wasn't hiding anymore. She was living, fully, completely, and without fear. If this story moved you emotionally, subscribe to our channel, leave your opinion in the comments, and share this video with others. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet sense of fulfillment. Emma no longer worried about the shadow of her past catching up to her. She had fully embraced her role as a mentor and a physician, sharing her wisdom and experiences with doctors who were struggling, who feared they might never be able to overcome their own personal failures. Her work at Metropolitan General was just as demanding as it had always been, but now it felt different. Each decision she made, each patient she treated, carried the weight of her experience not as a burden, but as a strength. She had learned the value of humility, of knowing that even the best doctors couldn't save everyone, but they could always do their best. Jake was still by her side, a steadfast companion both in and out of the emergency room. Their bond had deepened over time, not just as colleagues, but as friends who understood the weight of their work and the sacrifices it required. One day, after another intense shift, they sat together in the break room, sipping coffee. Jake looked at Emma, a thoughtful expression on his face. You've really come a long way, he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I mean, when I first met you, you were closed off. But now you're different." Emma smiled, but it wasn't just a smile of acknowledgement. It was a smile of quiet pride. "I'm not running anymore," she said softly. "I've stopped hiding." Jake nodded, understanding more than she realized. "And that's what makes you such a good doctor. Not just your skills, but your ability to face your past and move forward." Emma didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked out the window, the soft hum of the hospital around them. She knew that her past would always be a part of her, but it no longer controlled her. She had made peace with it, and that peace had allowed her to become the doctor she had always been meant to be. Later that night, as she prepared to head home, Emma stopped by the trauma bay one last time to check on a patient she had treated earlier. She felt a moment of quiet satisfaction as she watched the team work. Her presence no longer needed, but her contribution clear. The patient was stable, and that was enough. As Emma walked out of the hospital, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day lift off her shoulders. The sky was clear, the stars shining brightly above. For the first time in years, Emma felt truly free. She was no longer defined by her past mistakes. She was Elizabeth Kane, a woman who had fallen and rebuilt herself, who had learned that failure wasn't the end, it was just a part of the journey. The world was full of opportunities, and Emma was ready to face them all, with her past as a guide, not a shackle. As she drove home, her phone buzzed. It was another message from Dr. Wells, the director of the medical board. "Elizabeth, I just wanted to let you know that your work has inspired many in the medical community. You're not just a mentor to your peers, but a beacon of hope for those who thought they couldn't overcome their failures. Thank you for being the example they needed." Emma smiled to herself, the weight of her journey finally feeling worth it. She had faced her darkest days, and now she stood in the light, ready to continue moving forward. She parked in front of her apartment building, the lights shining warmly through the windows. As she entered her apartment and sat down at her desk, Emma looked at the framed photo of Marcus Wilson that still sat on her shelf. It had been 12 years since his death, 12 years since she had lost everything. But now in her heart, she felt a sense of peace. She had finally accepted that she wasn't the woman who had made that mistake. She was someone new, someone who had learned, someone who had grown. And for the first time in her life, Emma could say that she was proud of who she had become. The journey wasn't over, and it never would be. But she was ready for whatever came next. If this story moved you emotionally, subscribe to our channel, leave your opinion in the comments, and share this video with others.